So our first order of business is a public hearing on the Intermunicipal Development Plan Bylaw 785P07-20, and Spencer Coyle will introduce this.
Mr. Mayor, so as you've already mentioned, the bylaw before council as a part of the public hearing is 785-P-07-20. That is for amendments to the current intermunicipal development plan. So an intermunicipal development plan, as council is aware, is a plan that helps guide discussion and deliberation and negotiation between two municipalities, in this case, the town of Coaldale and Lethbridge County. The current plan dates to 2010 and has very much served its purpose in the sense that we've gone through a successful annexation process and dealt with a number of other smaller matters related to development and subdivision over the past 10 years, that this plan has helped to negotiate and make those processes easier. As a result of the annexation and as part of the current intermunicipal development plan, it's recommended that the plan be amended and updated to reflect new municipal boundaries and other minor process-related changes within 6 months of the date of an annexation occurring. Due to the workload and the timing within which the annexation took place, that timeline was extended based on a joint agreement between the town and the county. So as of today, the amendments before council are reflective of primarily boundary changes and a few minor changes relating to circulations and ways to make the circulation process for development permit applications and subdivision applications more efficient on both sides for the town and the county. It also reflects updates that align the plan more with the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan and the requirements of that provincial plan, that sub-regional plan from 2014. It is worth noting that Lethbridge County Council has already passed the bylaw that is in front of Town Council this evening on September 3rd without any further amendments after their public hearing process. I should note that from first reading to today, there was one minor amendment that was a clerical error that was made as a result of recommendation from Councillor Chapman. Other than that, no other changes have been made, and we've received no indication from anybody in the new intermunicipal development plan area or that has been annexed that they'd like to speak for or against the plan as it's presented here this evening. So on that note, just a quick highlight on stakeholder engagement. The new residents that were annexed in 2018 and all of the folks that make up the landowners within the intermunicipal development plan area, which is typically a 1.6 kilometer boundary outside of the town of Coaldale in Lethbridge County, all of those landowners have been circulated jointly between the town and the county. And one letter was received and the matter was resolved. It was a misunderstanding based on what amendments were occurring in this plan, and it was a county resident. So no other feedback has been provided for this plan up to and including this evening. So at this time, upon closure of the public hearing, the recommendation from staff would be to consider second and third reading of the plan amendments as presented. Thank you. Thank
you, Spencer. So then it was clearly advertised that people that wanted to speak tonight could register in advance of the meeting, and I understand that nobody registered in advance of the meeting to speak to this matter. Is that right?
That's correct, Mayor. We had 2 weeks worth of advertising, consecutive dates in the Sunny South News that were advertising this evening the plan and the fact that folks could pre-register if they did like to speak for or against the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. And I'll open the floor to council. Are there any questions to administration with respect to the development plan? Okay, and so we have nobody speaking in opposition to the plan. Does council have enough information to make their decision on this bylaw? Okay, seeing that there's no hands going up, I will declare the public hearing closed, and council consider the recommendation to approve second and third reading if they so desire. Councillor Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move second reading.
Okay, we have a motion from Councillor Holm to support second reading of the bylaw. Any discussion?
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, just a procedural matter here. Now that the public hearing has been closed, we need to do item 1.1 of the agenda, and then 2 before proceeding to section 6.1 for second and third reading, just to make sure it follows the sequence of the agenda. It makes the record keeping a little bit simpler.
All right, thank you. Got the summer jitters still, I guess. Okay, so we will hold your motion in abeyance, Councillor Holm, and thank you very much for indulging me on getting my sea legs here. So then we will go to 1.1. Let me go back up to the top. Okay, so we'll call the order of the meeting, and item 1.1 would be any declarations of conflict of interest, pecuniary interest. Is there anything on the agenda as it sits right now that anybody has any perceived or potential conflict of interest? I see none at this point, so we'll move on. We'll have adoption to the agenda. So one late adoption to the agenda will be an information item. Going on to 10.1 under correspondence will be a letter dated September 8th from Citizens for a Better Coaldale. So that will be in addition to the agenda. Councillor Simpson.
With that becoming part of the agenda, I will recuse myself for that part, as I will be giving a statement out tomorrow regarding that letter.
Okay, so noted, thank you. Are there any other additions to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Chapman makes that motion. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Then we have item 3.1, regular council meeting minutes of July 13th, 2020. Are there any errors or omissions? Councillor Chapman?
I'll move for adoption as circulated.
Councillor Chapman moves adoption of the minutes as circulated. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. And then we have item 4.1, Main Street project update, Spencer Croyle, and, well, Spencer Croyle anyway.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a continuation of updates that staff has given previously on one of our major projects for the summer. So previously we'd given updates on June 22nd and July 13th. I'm happy to report that the Main Street project continues to proceed without any major incidents. As the summer comes to a close, certainly the opportunity for weather delays goes up. We do hope for continued good weather to make sure the project can keep going without any major delays due to weather. I'll just read off a couple of project highlights and follow up with next steps and what the timeline looks like from here forward. So highlights since our last update, which was quite some time ago in July. Again, I'm happy to report the completion of all surface works for the intersection of 17th and 20th, the completion of all surface works for 17th to 18th, the block of 17th to 18th, all underground works from 18th to 19th, and both lifts of pavement from 18th to 19th. The design, color selection, and installation of curb extensions, or what we more commonly know as bulb outs, has been completed, and we just have a few of those left to install. I believe there are 2 on the west side of 18th and then the intersection at 19th as well, a little bit later on this month. Next steps include the completion of underground works for 19th to Highway 45, surface works for the same area, the installation of irrigation and base materials for the landscaped areas, the installation of the street trees and street furniture, And in terms of timelines, the 17th to 18th block is open and functioning, as is the intersection at 17th and 20th Avenue. It's anticipated that the 18th to 19th block will be open sometime this week, if not early next week, and that 19th to Highway 845 should be open by the week of October 5th. I will make a few notes on project completion. The town has partnered with the Chamber of Commerce to start planning a bit of a block party once the entire project is finished, as a way of celebrating the completion of the major upgrades that the 3 blocks has seen over this summer. The event would be focused on enjoying the Main Street area and highlighting the patience that all of the businesses have shown over the past couple of months as we've undertaken this work. The Main Street project budget, sorry, I'll start again. The Main Street project remains on budget at $3.4 million. And once the project has been completed later on this fall, a full project budget debrief will be presented to council. I don't have too much more to provide an update on, other than to provide a brief highlight in terms of where we've come from prior to the project to today. So as you can see up on the screen, we have an image from, I believe this is 2014, this Google Street View image. And then if we scroll to the next page, that is a couple of weeks ago. So we can see major progress that's been made on the project. A lot of valuable updates and changes to the Main Street that have occurred over the past several months. So just a point to reflect on, that we're making headway, and we look forward to the project being completed. In terms of stakeholder engagement, the 8th issue of the Main is currently being prepared. The first 7 have been well received, and it's also worth noting Tolstrup continues to work with the project stakeholders to be proactive in the communications that they need to continue with the businesses and organizations that front onto the street as they hope to bring the project to a close in the next couple of weeks. And with that, I would request that council receive this project update as information. Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. Are there any questions through to Spencer? Councillor Lloyd?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to make a comment that I've heard a lot of positive comments. People are out there taking pictures and they're already excited about it, so it's great, looks good. Thank you.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to receive this report for information. Councillor Simpson makes that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried unanimously, and thanks again, Spencer, for the update. And then there are no delegations. We have the intermunicipal development plan amendments bylaw 6.1 that we were just talking about in the public hearing. So Spencer, do you want to have any comments there?
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing else to add on that item. Thank you.
Okay, and we have Councillor Holm that stands ready to make the motion to support second reading of that bylaw. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. Councillor Chapman supports third and final reading of that bylaw. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Then we have the town plan bylaw. Ms. Spencer.
Thank you, Mayor. As council is aware, the town plan is what we've termed the municipal development plan update for the community. This project has been underway for coming up on 2 years, and it's based on the fact that not only do we have to have a municipal development plan as per the Municipal Government Act, but our current plan is approximately 20 years old. So after annexation, it certainly was the right time to develop a new plan for the community. The item before council this evening is to provide first reading for the current draft plan, or the plan that's been developed over the past 2 years, in order that we can schedule the public hearing, and at that time I would present a comprehensive presentation to council and the community on what the plan entails, what the feedback from the community has been, and whether it would be worthy of consideration of second and third reading. For this evening, I'll go through a few highlights, keep it fairly brief, and then finish off with a request for first reading on the draft bylaw. So again, as council is aware, the annexation of approximately 1,500 acres of land in 2018 is really one of the major things that required that this plan be updated, that the current municipal development plan be updated. Within the plan, we can consider a number of things such as land use, transportation, planning processes, environmental management, how to focus on the economy at the local level. So basically everything that makes up the different elements of the community can be focused on and become a part of the town plan. So it's fairly comprehensive. I will note that as a part of the process that got us to today, to the draft plan, there's certainly been a substantial amount of community consultation and feedback from those types of events and activities. Over about a dozen unique activities, we've had almost 2,000 respondents provide feedback, much of which has helped shape this plan. In particular, we had a first phase of engagement in the spring and summer of 2019, and then a second phase later this summer that was a combination of a fairly long-term survey and brief open houses at the end of August. The outcomes from phase 1 and phase 2 of engagement have certainly helped shape the plan. I will note that there's some out-of-scope feedback that's been received throughout the life of the engagement processes that this plan has been made up from. Most recently, phase 2 feedback results have included commentary on topics such as recreational opportunities for families and youth, need to continue updating infrastructure, and a desire for continued increase in transparency and accountability at the municipal level. I'm highlighting this because all of these topics are covered in the town plan in some way, shape, or form. However, it is worth noting the number of times that the commentary has been noted in written feedback throughout the engagement processes that have led us to today. Overall, it's certainly encouraging to see the amount of feedback that's helped guide the plan to the state that it's in now, and that wouldn't have happened without the assistance of the Regional Services Commission or the project working group, of which council was a part of. So with that, I would respectfully request that first reading be granted to the draft bylaw in front of council this evening, and that a public hearing be scheduled for October 13th at 5:05 p.m. And that brings my comments to a close. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. I'll open the floor to members of council if they have any questions or concerns to bring forward. As you said, we'll have a more robust discussion on that second reading. So, Councillor Simpson.
So I just want to say this was, I thought was very well done, and I want to thank, from all of us, thank everybody that was part of it to do it. So with that, way to go, and I'll make the motion to pass that council provide first reading of bylaw and to set the public hearing date for October 13th, 2020.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Simpson. Any other discussion? Seen none, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. And then we have 6.3, we have emergency management bylaw, and Clayton Rutberg is here to present that bylaw.
So the following report was just made to kind of summarize the changes to the emergency management bylaw. We did do a revision of the bylaw earlier on this year in March, but with some of the recent changes to the Emergency Management Act, we just added some of the stuff into the bylaw that
Are there any questions of Clayton by council members? Okay, rather administrative in nature, I believe, so. Does anybody care to sponsor first reading of the bylaw then? Councillor Chapman, any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Holm? Councillor Holm moves second reading of the bylaw. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Motion to have unanimous consent to have all three readings in one session. Councillor Lloyd makes that motion. Yeah, all in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Councillor Chapman supports third and final reading of the bylaw. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And we have a bylaw enforcement officer report by Clayton.
So again, just another update to one of our bylaws that was outdated from 1997, I believe, which is the bylaw enforcement officer bylaw. So just kind of updating the terms and references in the bylaw that allow us to be able to appoint bylaw officers, as well as some of the oversight items regarding it. So again, just bringing this forward to council for a first, second, and third reading.
Any questions through to administration? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you so much, Your Worship. Through to Mr. Rutberg, my question to you is with regards to the bylaw enforcement officer, two questions. One, who do they report to? And second to that, are there any restrictions that you might want to address within the bylaw, or the bylaw as stated is suffice?
We do have the ability to put restrictions on their appointment when they do become a bylaw officer. So the bylaw kind of gives us that ability to provide those restrictions. And currently we're most likely looking at using this to help out our animal enforcement. So technically they report up to myself.
One final question. Bylaw enforcement officer is separate from the community peace officer program.
Yeah, so right now with using Lethbridge Animal Services for animal control after hours, without them being appointed as bylaw officers, they wouldn't be able to actually enforce or follow up with a complaint under the bylaw. So this bylaw basically refreshes that and brings it up to date so we can appoint them to be able to deal with our animal bylaws.
Any further questions? We're in a position to entertain first reading of the bylaw then. Councillor Lloyd sponsors first reading of the bylaw. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? It's carried unanimously. Councillor Simpson sponsors second reading of the bylaw. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Then motion for unanimous consent, if that's council's wishes, to be able to hold all three readings in one night. Councillor Holm, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Councillors Chapman sponsors third and final reading of the bylaw. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, Clayton. So we're at 7-1. Are you going to invite? So we have 7.1, development permit application 2020-097, direct control. And Spencer will introduce this topic.
Thank you, Mayor. So as a brief background for development application 2020-097, first of all, the reason it's before council and not the planning commission is because it's being made on a property that's zoned direct control. And in the bylaw that was passed to make that portion of the property in question direct control, council did not delegate the decision-making authority to the planning commission or a development officer, which I should note is common practice. So in this case, that would be why the item is before council this evening. Just to provide a little bit of background, that bylaw that did provide the direct control zoning for a portion of the subject property we'll discuss this evening was made official January 13th of this year, and it's bylaw 771-P-11-19. So that particular bylaw changed an approximate 1.26 acre portion of the property legally known as Plan 0811-507, Block 3, Lot 1, or the subject lands, as we'll refer to it for the rest of this evening, from urban reserve to direct control. The intent of the bylaw and the direct control zoning was to allow for the operation of an RTM manufacturing and sales facility within that 1.26 acres. And it would be to allow for that use to occur until such time that it were to become incompatible with surrounding development in the future. So just a point of note that the intention there is relatively temporary in nature, but longer term temporary. So the item before council this evening is development application 2020-097, and that is to operate the business that the bylaw intended to allow for. So a sales and manufacturing facility for ready-to-move homes. As a part of the requirement of the Town of Coaldale, Lethbridge County Intermunicipal Development Plan, because this particular portion of the subject property is adjacent to the county, the town was required to circulate Lethbridge County on this application. And the response from Lethbridge County was fairly neutral, with a note that use of the county road to the east of the subject property would be discouraged unless a road use agreement could be reached between the county and the applicant for the file. Additionally, as per the requirements of the direct control bylaw itself, an internal review was conducted between myself and other departments that would be related to this type of development. And a couple of points for consideration were noted. One point was that no culvert was at the approach identified, and there would need to be confirmation that there would be no drainage issues in that area, or possibly the requirement that a culvert be placed there in case there is a need for a drainage solution there. There would also be a need for confirmation that the width of the approach would be sufficient for the intended use, and confirmation that no degradation of the north bank of the ditch across from the subject area would occur based on the turning motions of the longer vehicles that move these types of homes on and off the site. There are 17 conditions suggested by staff included in the report, and before we look at those, it's probably worth looking at a copy of the site plan, if we could go to that attachment, Lana, just to provide a visual of what's being discussed here this evening. And certainly if there's any additional detail required from council that I'm unable to provide, the applicant is available for discussion, which is always helpful. Okay, so here we have the schematic that was provided as a part of the development application. It shows a small green strip on the north portion of the property in front of the proposed use, with some trees that would be proposed to be planted. Signage on the northeast and northwest corners. And then a schematic showing the location of the sales office in the northeast corner of the property, and the approximate location of where display ready-to-move homes would be shown on this portion of the property. I should also note that it's proposed that a 10-foot high wind fence be provided on the north and east sides of the property, and a 20-foot high wind fence be placed on the west and south sides. If I understand correctly, that's partially for screening and partially to ensure a safe work site where things aren't getting blown around too much by the winds that we do get from time to time. There's also supporting documentation that provides a good amount of detail in terms of the specifics for the use. Now, if you can stay on the schematic, Lana, I'll just briefly go through the 17 suggested conditions and then wrap up my portion of the commentary. So the first, let's see. The first 8 conditions are standard conditions that deal with things like proper storage and collection and management of waste and refuse on site during construction, making sure that the roads don't get too much mud or debris on them during construction, things of that nature. Condition 9 is an indication that landscaping should be required at a minimum as per Section 3 of Schedule 9 of the town's land use bylaw. And that's partially due to the nature of the use and partially due to the fact that the county did request that reasonable amount of landscaping be required given the frontage onto the highway on this particular site. I should note that with the proposal before council this evening, it would be, from a staff perspective, considered reasonable to allow for an exception that landscaping as proposed on the site plan intends to make use of public road right-of-way that is currently prairie grasses. And the intention there would be, as far as I understand, that the applicant would cut those grasses and plant trees within that landscaping strip or that right-of-way that's within the town's road right-of-way instead of taking up additional area on their own property. And so to that point, it looks like the numbering's not quite right, but what should be number 10, which is actually number 11 on the conditions, is that a landscaping plan should be submitted for review and approval prior to the commencement of the use. Point 12 indicates that the signage that's proposed at 24 feet in length and 8 feet in height at the locations proposed would require a development approval by Alberta Transportation, as far as I understand, before being installed. 13 is that the applicant or owner shall submit a roadside development permit to Alberta Transportation to ensure they can obtain that approval from the Highways Department for that signage. 14 is that a stormwater management strategy should be provided to the satisfaction of the Director of Infrastructure and Engineering, and that deals with the question as to whether a culvert is required at the proposed approach. So that would effectively deal with any concerns with stormwater drainage in that area. 15 is confirmation that the width of the approach to the development area is sufficient, which again manages another one of the highlights from the staff considerations that were brought up during internal circulations. 16 is that the wind fence should be built as per the site plan, and 17 is just a note that any other conditions that council deems appropriate should be placed on the file prior to approval. So with that, I'll conclude my comments and am happy to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
There's only 16 conditions, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, Councillor Jumpman?
Thank you, Your Worship. More of a parliamentary question through to Spencer, if I may, being that I'm on a separate board. As a direct control of the whole of the committee, am I allowed to be on this?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, I should note that there is no means to appeal a direct control decision for a development application, so that there would be no concern as to whether or not you sit on the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board.
Okay, and then Councillor Holm, were you?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanting to clarify again, the sales office, is that still considered to be a non-permanent structure, that it's going to be on blocks or whatever and can be moved, so that there is no permanent structures on this site?
For that question in particular, Mr. Chair, I defer that to the applicant.
Okay. We have the applicant here, and for clarity, we are following the pandemic protocols and keeping the occupancy level to the 15 people allowed under the current pandemic regulations. So welcome to our meeting, Renee, and you can answer that question.
Well, good evening, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this. In answer to your question, through the chair, everything on site will be a non-permanent nature, including the sales office. There may not even be one for a while. So there's no indication that anything is going to go in the ground.
It's good to have the applicant here for these questions to be answered properly. So any other questions through? Councillor Lloyd?
Thank you, Your Worship. When you say temporary, do you have any idea how long temporary is? Like,
Are you referring to the entire facility?
yeah,
I can't answer that. Because we own the entire parcel, which eventually is going to get developed into something, we wanted to have this facility there now, because we can, hopefully. But there is no plans in place for the rest of the land as far as development goes. And so if we get to a point where, let's say we make an application for development of any kind there, and if this facility does not fit that future plan, I don't want to stand in my own way of having a facility there that doesn't complement the rest of the development. But at this point, there is, on my end at least, zero interest in doing anything further on the main portion of the land. Of course, I've appeared in front of you a number of times on the very south end of my property where the acreage is. That's the only thing that is planned, but as far as development of the land, there is no direct plan.
Councillor Chapman?
Your Worship, just speaking in favor of this, this proposal, you also are asking or hoping to add water and electricity in, which would come in from one of the acreages to the south. Could you explain that a little bit to, because I think that wasn't originally in part of the direct control proposal earlier.
Pretty good memory. Originally, we anticipated we would run the entire facility on temporary utilities. Since that application, it became clear that there is quite a strong possibility of having gas on site and power, not water. You mentioned water and power, it's actually gas and power. The reason for that is that I found out with the gas company that there is a gas line not far away that they think they could utilize. And the gas we would need on site would be used for temporary heating of office and some building space, of course. Power is something else that we're in the middle of talking about with Fortis, and as long as you pay enough money, Fortis will bring power. And so we're kind of in the, we're actually awaiting tonight's outcome, and then if we can proceed, we're looking at the cost difference between temporary power or bringing Fortis in.
Any other questions through to the applicant or administration? Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, Your Worship. For your hours of operations, they're stated official hours of activity are from 8 to 5. Is that Monday to Friday or for the full week?
Well, I forget something. It's been years since we operated on a weekend. So at this point, we're simply talking weekdays.
All right, well, it seems that we've exhausted the question and answer period portion of this, so we have recommendations before us, so. We got three recommendations to choose from, and Renee's hoping for one in particular, I'm sure, so. Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll make a motion to approve the development application with conditions that are stated here.
The conditions as amended, the 16, because there's a numbering amendment that has to be made.
Correct. So number 17 would be out and just the 16.
Okay. We have that motion by Councillor Simpson. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. Yeah, congratulations. Huh? Thanks for your interest in Coaldale and adding more activity. All right, and then Lana has a report on the policy for information management, and so you can just do your report right from there, if you will, Lana. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I presented an information management policy to Council as an ongoing effort to organize and implement best practices of proper records management. And supporting schedules were provided to help provide the town of how we will collect, organize, and store existing and future documentation, both in paper and electronic copy. I also note that this policy will help set the foundation for the legislative requirements as well, and where the responsibilities will lie within the town administration. I presented the policy. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions through to Lana on her policy that she has brought forward? Okay, we have Councillor Chapman. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you very much, and Your Worship, and thank you, Lana, for putting this together. I see that your list of documents and information that you'd be saving is quite exhaustive, and I was just wondering if you would like to include videos in your list of items.
That is an excellent point. We do have a separate policy relating. Are you specifically talking regarding our live streaming video, or?
Probably referee that pretty good, but I think any other additional videos that show up on other media forms that are property of the town, whether we marketing videos, anything like that, should be property of the towns.
That's an excellent point, and I can definitely make a note of that. I can also confirm that our current live streaming videos are retained for a period of 4 years before they are deleted. Is that something that is of interest to council to change at this point?
No, I don't think there's any desire for that. So do we have a separate policy for maintenance of the video feeds, or can that be an amendment to this policy as well?
We do have a separate policy related to our live streaming, like when we did implement that. So, and that's where the documentation of that it is retained for a 4-year period is on that policy.
Okay, good. Any further questions to Lana? Thank you for taking the initiative to draft the policy. Okay, Councillor Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship. The information management policy is written.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? I see none. Call the question. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. And then we have Kyle Beauchamp here to present on item 7.3, Town of Coaldale electricity contract.
Okay, good evening. So in front of you we have discussion about the town's electricity contract. Currently the town is under contract with AUMA Energy Program, which is set to expire December 31st, 2020. The objective of this discussion is to compare the options the town has available for electricity utility services effective January 1, 2021. Just to note, the town's gas contract doesn't expire until the end of 2022, so that's been excluded from these discussions. So historically, Coaldale has participated in an aggregate procurement plan for the purchase of our electricity utilities. This plan essentially pools municipalities together to obtain a collective price through the energy market, which is usually more cost-effective than going on their own to obtain pricing. Currently, the town's yearly electricity cost is approximately $600,000 a year. Currently, the town has participated in the AUMA Energy program for a number of years, with the town's contract again expiring at the end of this year. As a result, administration reviewed AUMA's current plan with that of RMA for their aggregate procurement plan. It should be noted that the RMA program is operated by an energy management company of Edmonton, being 8760. So when comparing the electricity services, there's three main factors that should be compared. One is electricity pricing, two is administrative fees, and three is other services. In regards to electricity pricing, regardless of the option the town goes with, we don't expect much of a change in consumption costs between the two options. It should be noted that participating in either of these programs ensures the town is compliant with our purchasing and tendering requirements. Administrative fees, both the AUMA and RMA program do charge an administration fee. The fee under the AUMA program right now is approximately $11,300, while under the RMA program it would be expected to be $6,300. It should note that under the AUMA program that depending on the year, sometimes we do receive an energy rebate. And the last rebate we received was in 2017, just for over $3,500. So regardless of those two options, the administrative fee is modest in regards to the whole spectrum. The biggest difference between the areas, between the two programs for the AUMA and the RMA program, excuse me, are the other services available under the program. With the RMA program being operated by an energy management firm, they do provide a few more benefits and factors available to us. For example, some of these consist of review of this various sites around the town of Coaldale to ensure those sites are classified into the proper category for distribution charges. They also can assist in utilities set up with new installation and new factories, new facilities, sorry. This would be of good benefit with the construction of the new recreation center in the future. So as a result, when comparing those two options together, it's administration's belief that the town of Coaldale would see the biggest benefit from entertaining or participating in the RMA program with 8760. In order to do this, the town of Coaldale must commit to the procurement proceedings by September 30th. As a result of that commitment, the town would essentially be signing a new contract with RMA in 8760. If the town does not proceed to do that way, we would simply sign a price extension with the AUMA, as our contract would not change. So that said, currently it's administration's recommendation that we proceed with the RMA 8760 electricity procurement effective January 1, 2021. And I will turn this back to council for questions.
Well, thank you, Kyle, for bringing this report forward. I just have a couple of questions, and then I'll turn the floor over. Number one, do we have to take out a membership or an associate membership with RMA to subscribe to this service?
We do not need a membership for that, no.
Okay. And the gas contract, is that a standalone agreement with AUMA still then?
Correct. The gas contract would remain with AUMA. And again, that would expire at the end of 2022.
And
So
they're standalone, they're not dependent on one another?
That's correct. Yeah, there are two different facets in that realm.
Okay. And it's just, one note that I, might offer is on bullet point 3, AUMA is an advocacy network for urban municipalities in Alberta, and therefore, that is an embedded kind of a benefit on participating because they do derive profit through operating these services and then declare a dividend every year from the service AMSC to AUMA to provide lobbying and advocacy effort. So, every municipality's participation in these different programs contributes to the bottom line of AUMA, and so it's, our little bit of a town for what they might generate as a profit might not adversely impact it, but it should be noted that they do offer that as a embedded part of their package as well. And I would maybe suggest that if we do approve this, that we might just, write AUMA and give them the reasons for us, going elsewhere, so that they can maybe review their scoping of their product offering and maybe offer that to municipalities in subsequent years or something. But that's all I have to say. Any other comments by council? Councillor Chapman?
Worship, I would have liked to have seen that part of the impact assessment in this report. Might have helped me to understand our relationship with AUMA. I appreciate the fact that this has been very diligent and thoughtful research in comparing RMA with and their program with AUMA, and so that just creates a little more difficulty for me in making a better assessment in terms of how I'd like to vote on this.
So I'll just clarify that, I would be supportive of your recommendation, but, just, tidy up a few things with my comments so that it's not lost. That, the people at AUMA work hard to deliver these services. I don't want their efforts to be, not commented upon, but when it comes down to the work that you put into this, I'm supportive of your direction on this.
And it's certainly noted. Thank you for bringing up their efforts with municipalities. That was missed from this report. Essentially, part of this, the rationale for administration's recommendation essentially comes down to the other services available, and that it's a little more of a stance at looking what we are currently doing versus and what we've done in the past, and how we can essentially enhance some of our services, with energy rebates and, not rebates, energy efficient changes and additions to various facilities. That does have a factor into classifications that facilities are put into for transmission fees. So the program under RMA does provide a little more benefits in for us to review those and ensure that we're properly classified and perhaps save on those transmission charges going forward. So that's kind of the basis behind the recommendation, but again, I do appreciate the comment regarding their advocacy efforts.
What would be determine the contract, I guess, would be, is that, you mentioned that in the...
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Is there a term of this contract?
So once we participate in the procurement plan, after that, administration would work with 8760 to develop an energy essentially plan. And what that would consist of would be options to enter into a 2-year versus 3-year versus 5-year, and how, if that's a fixed or variable rate. So those discussions and work would happen in October after the September 30th deadline.
Thank you. Councilman Chapman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think we want to delay this too much, being that you have to commit to this by September 30th, so this would be something we need to deal with. I would move that we proceed with the RMA 8760 electricity procurement. I think maybe just additional amendment to that to maybe that council write a letter to AUMA indicating this direction. I know that RMA and AUMA have very close alliances in a number of fronts, and so maybe some discussions at that level will help with further cost effectiveness for municipalities across the province.
So we have a motion by Councillor Chapman to go with the administration's recommendation and to issue a letter outlining the reasons why the decision was made to AUMA. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Did I see you? No. Opposed? Oh, Councillor Pauls is opposed. So that's 6-1. And we have Clayton up on deck, and emergency management update, COVID-19.
Thank you. Just a brief update on the COVID-19 response in Coaldale. So on March 5th, 2020, we had our first presumptive case in Alberta. By March 16th, we were up to 56 cases with numerous public safety measures in place. On March 16th, the town of Coaldale activated our Emergency Operations Center, and we were activated for 114 days total until we deactivated. Currently, just kind of a bit of a current situation where things are at. And these numbers were of last week when this report was submitted, but there was a total of 1,585 cases in Alberta, 10 of them within Lethbridge County, and 18 within the city of Lethbridge, 35 in surrounding counties and MDs. As I said, we were activated for 114 days, which was approximately 884 staff hours related to COVID-19. As a part of the response, we met either virtually or in person at the beginning, twice a week to make sure our strategies lined up with the provincial strategies and orders that were in place. We coordinated all the PPE supplies for the town staff, as well as some other essential businesses around town, such as daycares that were looking after children for essential service workers. And we engaged with the public to ensure that health guidelines were being utilized correctly. A bit of a risk assessment currently, just some of the risks that we have going on right now. We are into our annual flu season. We have a lot of activities that are restarting, whether it's sports, public gatherings, school starting back in now. Some public buy-in issues in various places with maybe public not always following all of the recommendations that are currently out there. And our case numbers are remaining high and continuing to grow. Some of our risk mitigation are public safety measures such as the physical distancing, etc., that is in place currently. Masks, especially in schools that are currently being utilized. Increased testing that is in place right now, and internally continued screening for town staff and general public that might be interacting with the town staff through our screening process that's in place. Just a bit of an update on some of the town facilities is in the report as well. Due to the fact that we've deactivated our emergency operations center, we are coordinating with the normal business units that would normally be taking care of these facilities. For example, recreation with Cindy with the arena to answer any questions and such that they may have. Current actions, so as I said, we're currently not active in the EOC. It was felt after that 114 days that our normal processes that we have in the town were managing it effectively, so we deactivated. we are continuing as emergency management to participate and comment in on all the protocol and procedure development around risk mitigation for town staff and the public, and continually engaging with our stakeholders as well. Some communities have discussed with some implementing mandatory masking policies for public facilities. So really the question being from this report, is there any direction back to administration or that council may wish to pursue some type of similar policy? I think that's it.
Okay, I'll open the floor up to Clayton. I guess just for clarity, throughout your report, which was very good and thorough, sometimes you stated we for case counts, etc. And I would note that all those numbers were in general applicable to the entire province, where except were specified to the county of Lethbridge and that. And you're not aware of any specific cases reported within the current community, or are you?
Their case reporting goes as a whole for the county, so that would include the other towns and villages that are a part of the county as well. So none that we're aware of locally, but that is reported as a whole. So
Yeah, thank you. The floor is open to council. So would you, I guess, I'll take that back temporarily, but with your report, would you say that the direction from the medical health officer with regards to different public facilities, and the different organizations like minor hockey or those kind of organizations that might occupy facilities such as sports flats, they already have their protocols in place and stipulate whether or not masks or no masks are already required when utilizing most of our public facilities in any event, is that right?
yeah, so specifically looking at the hockey, there is numerous guidelines in place by the associations and organizations themselves. So most of our best practices have been to copy those and implement them here, and they're following them anyway. That's their intent. So.
And there's no public viewing of any in these facilities at this time, is there?
I believe they do have some public viewing for certain age groups, but Cindy Hoffman knows that for sure. But
okay, there. All right. Now I'll let council have a kick at it. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and I guess I'll speak first, being that there's some things here that I appreciate you focusing on, and thank you so much for your report, Clayton, and kind of a good summary of the summer and at year to date. And what I'll say here is that I would, if there was a motion about a mask bylaw, I would vote not in favor. And the reason being is that I believe that our community has been behaving really well and not creating statistics. I think that people are also complying and respecting others, and also when they're patrons in different venues, including businesses, that people are respecting those venues, including the food market or any of the stores downtown. I think the businesses have been really working hard to try to create an atmosphere that is not only friendly but also respectful and safe for everyone. So I don't think we need to move with a mask bylaw at this time.
Okay, any others?
Further to that, Sunny South Lodge has also been adhering to all the protocols set out by the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and I think those are the protocols that we as a town are adhering to, and I want to thank you so much for your commitment to that, to those protocols, Clayton.
I would echo your comments about not supporting the mask bylaw at this time. You know, I think that I've witnessed in our community that some people do choose the mask and some don't. And, you know, I would encourage that each group of constituents respect the decisions of others to avail themselves of any safety precautions that they need and you know, respect that they have that choice to do so, and you know, especially if they're a vulnerable population or have, you know, pre-existing health conditions. You know, I think people are being very respectful of that in our community, and you know, it's very refreshing to see that. So unless the chief medical officer of health ramps up different protocols or whatnot, then I think that we can always enact something if things are in that up cycle conditions. But I think Coaldale's not one of the communities that are adding to the complexity of this pandemic. So I guess we have a choice that, okay, Councillor Holm, you were gonna jump in?
Accept this for information.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Clayton, for preparing the report, and I put Councillor Holmes' motion on the floor to receive this report for information. All in favor? Great. And we have Chief McEwen here for his report. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hey, Your Worship and members of council, thanks for your time tonight. What I'm presenting is the second quarter report from Emergency Services. And keep in mind, this is and was during the lockdown period, so it's a little bit dialed down from some things we have done in the past. But just to start it off, on the next slide, Lana, just looking at our call counts over the last 5 years. So we're currently sitting at 207. That's just to the end of the second quarter, so we're pretty much right on track with our record year last year, so it hasn't quite slowed down. During the lockdown, we did see less of certain types of calls. There was less motor vehicle collisions, I think just less cars on the road during that time, but we made up in other types of calls. There was still a significant amount of medical calls during that time, and we were fairly busy still. So 207 at the end of the second quarter. Looking at the town versus Lethbridge County next. So we're currently at 139 calls in the town of Coaldale and 68 calls in Lethbridge County. Again, our calls are higher in the town typically, and that is due to the higher number of medical calls that we do attend within the town of Coaldale. So this slide is showing the town of Coaldale, 139 calls to date, 45 fire calls, and 94 medical. So this is about right on par with what we typically see, is that we're responding to about 60% medical calls and 30+% fire calls. Lethbridge County, it's about the complete opposite. So 42 fire calls in the county so far at the end of the second quarter, 26 medical calls. So just about an even split, complete opposite of what we do in town. So this one is showing the actual hours on call, time on call. So the darker blue there is Coaldale and lighter blue is Lethbridge County. So 53% of our hours so far this year have been in Lethbridge County. So even though our calls are less in the county, we're spending more hours. So those are your motor vehicle collisions and fires that typically take longer, right, versus the half-hour medical call that we're doing in town. For hour-wise, 714 firefighter hours in town, 591 hours in the county so far. A breakdown of what type of calls altogether we've been going on this year. Again, medical is still the highest, 58% of all of our calls are medical. Alarms, so false alarms and commercial alarms, 21%. It's still a little bit higher than we typically see and kind of on par with what we saw in 2019. Fire at 12%, motor vehicle collisions at 6%, and mutual aid calls at 3%. Code reds so far at the end of the second quarter are down, which is good news. Only responding to 4 so far in 2020 at the end of the second quarter. Mind you, that can catch up very quickly. We did 5 code red calls in a row last weekend. So. Talk a little bit about how COVID-19 impacted us. At the end of the second quarter, we responded to 21 COVID-19 incidents. So that's the way the incident gets coded by dispatch. So they give us a bit of a heads up when we get the medical call that it's potential COVID. It doesn't mean there's 21 confirmed cases in Coaldale or anything like that. It just means someone is showing symptoms and we have to adjust our response. We have to put on all the PPE. So we've been tracking how many times that we've had to do that. So 21 at the end of the second quarter. PPE shortage, we were definitely short on N95s. That is the respirator that everyone in the world needed. We had placed an order early March and I still haven't received that, and that was from our standard medical supplier out of Calgary. So just recently Alberta Health Services was able to release some of their stock to emergency service departments who run the medical first response program, and we were able to get some masks. So we were running fairly short for a while there, but now that supply chain has gotten back up and running, so we're sitting okay now. DC Rupert talked a little bit about the EOC activation, so 114 days straight that we were activated during that. And I kind of had a look at how many hours staff put in. It was a tremendous dedication from all of our town staff. They put a lot of time in. And what we found, there was 884 and a half hours of town staff time put into that. And if we look at that in an hourly wage, it's about $32,000 so far that the town has kind of put in on wages for the amount of time that we've been responding to this. That doesn't include any PPE or any other equipment, supplies, hand sanitizer, stuff like that. That's additional costs on top. So we've done a really good job documenting all of our time and everything that we've done, and corporate services has been tracking all of our times quite diligently. So if there is any disaster relief funding or anything to come back in the future, then we have that documentation to show how much we did and how much we spent on that. Missed events, obviously we missed a lot of stuff this summer, no settler days for the town. We missed out on our summer appreciation barbecue that we usually have with all the volunteers. The demo derby, we missed out on 3 to 4 weeks of training. During the lockdown period, we just did not meet during that time until we could figure out how to train safely. Our Coaldale event and our fire hall construction meetings had to go virtual during that time. Now we're back to in-person for those construction meetings. Training, when we did get back at training, we actually split up into 2 nights. So traditionally, Coaldale Fire always trained on Monday nights. It's now Monday and Wednesdays. So half of the people train Monday, the other half train Wednesdays. We started that over the lockdown period, and we've actually really liked the flexibility that it's given us. So we're actually going to continue doing that long term. There's a lot of benefits to that. Smaller groups, less people there, a lot more hands-on time onto the equipment. So volunteers enjoy the flexibility as well too. If they have hockey Monday nights, well, they can catch up on Wednesday and they can come Wednesday. So it's been working actually quite well. We got back into training, so in the summer we have run some courses. We did some pump and engine driver operator courses. Our new recruits, we started an NFPA 1001 Level 1 program, which we're about 2 months into. And we have 10 firefighters that started the Blue Card Command Officer Training Program. So we have been still fairly busy with our training and doing what we can virtually. Response, we've had several people, over the time having to go on self-isolation or quarantining. We've had a decreased number of respondents for a number of reasons due to that self-isolation, due to potential, if they have a family member that's perhaps high risk and they're avoiding coming to calls. So there's a number of reasons why, but we have had a bit of a decrease in our response from available personnel. So I want to talk a little bit about the firefighter mental health program. So a study titled Mental Disorder Symptoms Among Public Safety Personnel in Canada that was published by a number of authors in 2017 took a look at more than 5,800 respondents in emergency services and found the occurrence rate of a single symptom or multiple symptoms of mental disorder in public safety providers is substantially higher than the general public. Firefighters screen positive for symptoms at 3 times the rate for the general public, while paramedics screen positive at nearly 5 times the rate for general public. So we look at what type of barriers are there to addressing mental illness in the Canadian Fire Service. I think the first and most obvious answer is stigma. Fear of being stigmatized keeps us from asking for help, resulting in a feeling of being trapped and weak. An additional barrier might be financial or employment driven, and a third barrier is access to care. So in Coaldale, we identified a need for more psychological supports for our volunteers. Our volunteers sign up to serve our community and shouldn't have to suffer for years or into retirement with a psychological injury sustained on the job. In March, we started the Coaldale Firefighter Mental Health Program, and we teamed up with a psychological services provider based out of Lethbridge and Coaldale. To kick off the program, we hosted the lead psychologist in Coaldale for a meet and greet with the team and did a critical incident stress awareness presentation. We've had several firefighters seek assistance over the last 5 months, which proves to me that this was a needed program for our volunteers. The town does have the EAP, and that is available to volunteers as well. However, people are reluctant to use it. Using the EAP, some things are uncertain, like who you're gonna see or where you're gonna be meeting them. These are all barriers to care which discourage people from reaching out for help and ultimately end up suffering in silence. Our program strives to break down those barriers by removing the stigma, letting people know it's okay to not be okay, and bridging the gap by introducing the psychologist to the team beforehand so they can put a face to a name and start building a rapport in an informal, relaxed environment first. So far, we've been able to incorporate this program into our existing operational budget without the need to ask for additional funding. However, if this program continues to be utilized on a regular basis, a request for funding may have to be presented during budget deliberations. In addition to this, we recently applied to the Supporting Psychological Health and First Responders grant that the province had announced. There's up to $1.5 million available for this grant in 2020-2021. We've submitted an application to fund and enhance our program for 12 months. And we should hear back by the end of the year or January if we were successful in receiving any grant funds. On a lighter note, we have Operation Celebration that came to an end. So during the lockdown period, we started the Operation Celebration Initiative. Due to COVID-19, kids were not allowed to have traditional birthday parties with their friends. And we felt this was a great way we could help out and make a kid's day just a little bit more special. We had a great reception from the public, and it quickly grew into a daily occurrence where we would do 5 birthdays a day, Monday to Friday, and about 10 birthdays each, Saturday and Sunday. So this only ran for 2 months, so we did 142 birthday celebrations over April and May. That is it for the presentation.
For that update. I was just wondering if you had any report on the fire academy. Is that suspended during COVID, or is it up and running?
Through to the worship. The fire academy is still up and running at this time. We delayed the start of class a couple weeks, so the academy actually starts this week on Friday.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we have 10 students that are ready to go.
Well, that's super. And I wanted to commend you for being proactive in introducing the mental health component to the department. I think that was very astute of you to introduce that, and I commend you for that. I just, before council, I got an urgent request from the city of Lethbridge for us to support their campaign to maintain local dispatch 911, and I wonder if you have any thoughts on if we should support their campaign and submit a letter of support to the provincial government to maintain the service in the way it is.
Your worship, I can speak to that. I would strongly recommend that you do support this. We're gonna see a decreased level of service once dispatch goes to Calgary. We won't see it in EMS. We're gonna see it in the fire side of things. So for example, if you think when someone calls 911 and they need an ambulance, they're gonna pick up that phone in Lethbridge. They're gonna transfer it to Calgary. When they're on the phone in Calgary, they might realize this is serious, we need a fire department response. Now, that request has to come back to Lethbridge, and then we're gonna get the call. So it's adding multiple steps, and it's gonna delay our response extremely to medical calls.
Thank you for that insight, and so if council does receive this for information, I would maybe recommend that we add on to it that we support the city of Lethbridge in providing a letter of support for this current initiative.
Another major issue with that is interoperability, how you're gonna have 3 dispatch centers, one's fire, one's EMS in Calgary, and one's police in Red Deer. So if we have a large-scale event, you know, how are communications gonna go? How's the situational awareness gonna run between the dispatchers? Anytime they wanna talk to a dispatcher, they have to pick up a phone and make a call. Whereas in Lethbridge, they're all in the same room. So there's kind of that intuitive notion, if there's a serious call, the other dispatcher's gonna know about it right off the bat, and they can get things rolling. So between the 3 separate dispatch centers, I think it's gonna create a mess if there's large events.
Thank you very much. Any other questions by council? Councilor Simpson.
Your worship, I just want to make sure I heard you right. Did you say there was 5 code red cases just this past weekend?
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Chapman.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and through the Chief, thank you so much for all your hard work, and send my regards to your team for all the work they've put in, and it's been a hard summer for everybody, especially when you're short N95s and dressing up with PPE all the time. It's really been an extended part of your duties as assigned. Just before we make a motion to approve your report, and second motion to write a letter, both of which I would support, if you might just offer us up a short update on the fire hall.
Sure.
Before you go on with that update with the fire hall, then I'll just recuse myself.
The record will note that Councilor Simpson recused herself during this question.
Through to Councilor Chapman. The fire hall, we've struck a little bit of a delay on the renovation side, so that's why you haven't seen a ton of work on that currently. The initial move-in date was supposed to be at the end of July, and now we're obviously past that. So we're working with the contractor and consultants right now on a path forward, as there's been some issues with the renovation side. So they're doing what they can around. You can see they've started, our town park staff have done the landscaping, which looks quite nice. They're working hard on that. We have some exterior paint that's being done, and they're fixing some concrete currently that was an issue as well.
Okay.
Thank you for that, and museum side looks really awesome too.
Yeah, that's really coming together. It looks great.
Anybody else? Okay, are we done with any questions about the fire hall then? Councillor Lloyd?
So the new part is complete, we're just waiting for the renovations to be completed?
That's right. So phase 1 is completely done. That's where we're operating out of right now. Phase 2 is the renovation of that existing hall. And we're almost there. We're getting towards the end. However, there's just one item that's holding it up right now.
So you still have temporary offices then?
Yeah, we're all still sharing the office upstairs, so.
Good. Okay. Yeah, you can introduce Councillor Simpson back to the meeting. Okay. We have Councillor Simpson rejoining us now. And I don't think there's any further questions, so council can consider what to do next. Councillor Chapman?
Your worship, I'll make two motions. First to receive Chief McEwen's report for information. And the second motion, we'll vote on that first, and then the second motion would be to write a letter to the city or
Okay, we'll
supporting their
divide and do your receive for information motion first. You have a motion by Councillor Chapman to receive Chief McEwen's report for information. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. And then your second motion would be to
write a letter of support as requested.
by the city of Lethbridge. I might suggest that we might vet the letter through to Chief McEwen, because he made a couple of very good operational observations that won't be reflected in the template letter that the city has provided. So we can, once we have his input on the letter and any commentary that would be helpful for the specific case of Coaldale, then we could execute that letter. And it's been asked to CC our MLA and the various other levels of the premier, etc. So that would be the way the letter would be distributed if that is favorable to council. Okay, is that clear? Okay, so we have Councillor Chapman's motion. I'll call the question. Any question, discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
And we have section 8.3, financial update Q2 by Kyle Beauchamp as required by the Municipal Government Act. So away you go, Kyle.
Good evening again. So in front of council is the financial update for the town's operational and capital projects for the period ended June 30th, 2020. So Q2 here. With a greater degree of uncertainty for 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, future financial projections for 2020 are difficult at this time. However, based on the early projections for 6 months of the year, we do figure that the town's year-end results will come fairly close to the budget amounts, likely either with a small surplus or a small deficit at the end of the year, which is actually ideal. You generally don't want to see large surplus or deficit at the end of the year. I'll just kind of go through the report here. Lana, if you want to scroll. Oh, that's perfect. Beat me to it. I'll just kind of point through a few items of note here. Property tax revenue, again, as we discussed during the mill rate discussions, we did see higher than expected numbers from growth from assessment. As a result, we do expect a property tax surplus between $30,000 and $50,000 this year. Operating grants, we had a $30,000 surplus from the MSI operating grant, and we'll receive a $41,000 surplus from our recreational funding agreement. User fee, sales of goods and services, so this consists of such as pool revenue, revenue at the arena, revenue that community services may charge for specific charged events, while the majority of this revenue does happen in the later 6 months of the year, we do anticipate lower than expected revenue this year with COVID-19. However, the exact number is unknown at this time. Investment income will likely be between $50,000 and $100,000 lower than expected. Again, due to the pandemic, a lot of our interest rates on borrowing did decrease as a result. We expect to see a lower than expected revenue for fines and traffic penalties due to reduced activity for photo radar and traffic monitoring due to COVID-19. Fines, penalties, and taxes, we do expect this number to be lower. However, that was part of the June 30th tax deadline deferral. If we go to the next page, you want to just keep going there. I'll talk about the expenses on the next page. So to kind of break them out by objects a little easier, you can see for the year, 6 months of the year, salaries, we do have 52% of the budget remaining. Contracted services, there was approximately 60%. A few items of note. Phase 1 of the street lighting program had incurred $105,000 with a $298,000 budget. Roads, alleys, sidewalks had incurred $73,000 out of total $275,000. Majority of these expenses do happen during the summer, so we do expect lower numbers here, and we'll expect to see higher results in the Q3 update. The sewer relining program, 0 expenses incurred June 30th. My understanding is the procurement requirements are being worked on for that. Snow removal, only $10,000 spent this year out of a $100,000 budget. And solid waste and collection and RCMP policing are right on schedule at 50% for the year. Materials, goods, supplies, the biggest one of that is our water supply that we obtain. 58% of the budget was remaining. Again, that's not uncommon as there's heavier consumption for the July and August months. One final point with interest here on the recreation center. So the loan was obtained last December. For the first 6 months of the year, we've paid a total of $135,000 worth of interest. Since those funds have been used and locked into a GIC for a year, in which they are also accumulating interest. So the net interest rate paid on that $10 million debenture has actually only been 0.207% for a total interest of $10,000 for the first 6 months. Scroll to the next page there. Just kind of a summary of the capital projects. Reading left to right, we have the project description, project budget, and then the expenses incurred per year with the budget actual overage on the right. So I won't go through each of those, but I will take any questions from council that they may have.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if I'm reading this right, then am I seeing that property taxes, that we've actually been paid almost 100% of the property taxes that we sent out for collection in June?
So this is done based on the accrual base. So this is what we are total of what we received and will be received. In regards to your comment, I did check on that today. There's about $3.7 million still outstanding in collection of property taxes for this year.
Okay, so I was just reading into that 100% of the people, even though we gave them an opportunity to pay late without penalty, that the majority are still have paid the taxes. So, okay, so that takes care of my same question with utility and services then. Thank you.
Well, are you all done then, Kyle, then?
I am wrapped up unless there's any other specific questions from council.
I think Councillor Holm?
Move to accept this for information.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the update and your guidance on the town's finances. We have a motion by Councillor Holm. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, so now we are into the correspondence area, and we are, the only one item that we have in correspondence is 10.1, and that would be the item that Councillor Simpson declared earlier, so you will give her an opportunity to recuse herself. Okay, and I have a prepared statement, and I took liberty to try and be as comprehensive as possible. So it is a lengthy statement, so if my voice does crap out during the time, then I might call upon another member of council to carry on in case it gets not functional. So I'll introduce this, and I have thought long and hard about how best to respond to the most recent letter addressed to myself and town council that was received on September 8, 2020 from the group that refers to themselves as Citizens for a Better Coaldale. I shall refer to them as the group going forward. The group's letter of September 8, 2020 is the third letter they have submitted to town council. Given that they have chosen to dialogue indirectly with council through various media and social media and media outlets, I feel compelled as Coaldale's mayor to set the record straight on a number of fronts. And as such, I have prepared a statement that I would like to read into record. When council discussed the group's first letter of July 8, 2020 at the regular council meeting of July 13, 2020, council responded by inviting the group to meet with council in September of this year. Council was hopeful that this meeting would be productive, given that the group espoused to be in favor of promoting, and I quote from their letter of July 8th, constructive dialogue between Coaldale Town Council and its residents. Unfortunately, it does not appear that this group's actions are consistent with their vision of promoting constructive dialogue. Having observed their behavior over the past several weeks, there is sufficient evidence, in my view, to call a spade a spade. In my opinion, this group is not interested in having constructive dialogue with the town. They appear instead to be politically motivated and dedicated to painting the town and town council in a disparaging light, sowing discord in the community along the way. Unfortunately, the day after council agreed to meet with this group, they published a press release which contained numerous factually inaccurate statements and leading questions about the town's Civic Square project and other matters. On July 14, 2020, less than 24 hours after council publicly agreed that at a regular council meeting to meet with them. Given that misinformation about the town regarding our capital projects and some of our colleagues around the council table here has spread as a result of the group's efforts, I feel compelled to set the factual record straight on a number of fronts. In my opinion, it is unfortunate that this group went public with their campaign before taking up council's offer to meet with them. Since the group didn't wait for council to explain in person facts that have long been public, I will do so here for those who may now be confused as a result of the recent spread of misinformation. First, what is Civic Square? Civic Square involves the construction of a two-story commercial office building and the development of a neighboring outdoor space that aims to attract people and businesses to Coaldale's downtown core. While new business will locate to the main floor of this building, The town will relocate its administrative office building to the second floor, allowing the town to sell its current town office building for commercial redevelopment. This is not simply clever branding or a camouflage name for a new town office building. Civic Square is the name of a project that aims to transform Coaldale's downtown core. Council developed this project in response to community feedback it received during its strategic planning open houses and the subsequent community survey that took place in May to June 2018. Through these feedback avenues, the consistent message received by Council was revitalize Main Street and make Main Street a priority. Second, what are the intended benefits of the town's Civic Square project? The Civic Square project is another step in Council's strategy for revitalizing Main Street, a long-established community focus area. Civic Square is an economic development project at its core, but unlike the town's Northeast Industrial Park development, this is an economic development project that will be occurring on Coaldale's Main Street. When Council first approved this project in public during the regular Council meeting of November 26, 2018, we were motivated to approve it because of the significant economic development potential it carried. To list a few examples, once completed, Civic Square will bring additional businesses, services, and activity to Coaldale's downtown core. As the first new commercial office building in many years, it will bring new jobs to Coaldale. The commercial space within the Civic Square office complex will be taxable assessment. The same goes for the current town office building once it is sold to a private developer. This creates additional tax revenue for the town. The Civic Square complex will contain meeting rooms that will be available for the public community to use. Paying cash for the town space allows for the project to have zero impact on the town's operating budget aside from expenses it already has, like utilities. Our goal is that such a project will stimulate additional growth and investment in Coaldale's downtown core, creating economic momentum, if you will. The adjacent outdoor space will facilitate the community's ability to meet and host events, which will have positive spin-offs for many of the existing businesses. While not everyone will agree with this strategy, nor does everyone have to, we have been public about our vision for this project for almost 2 years. And the anticipated outcomes of the Civic Square project is consistent with Council's strategic plan, the first draft of which being with the community in early spring 2018. Next, I will provide some information about the Civic Square timeline. The town first discussed its Civic Square project in a public council meeting, which was live streamed on November 26, 2018. A copy of this video recording can be found on the Town of Coaldale's YouTube channel. Subsequent to this approval, a detailed written description of the projects contained within the town's 2019-2021 capital budget was published on the town's website the next day and has remained there ever since. From December 3rd, 2018 to December 12th, 2018, poster boards were displayed in council chambers at the town office, along with numerous social media updates, inviting anyone that was interested to stop by and learn more about the projects. 2 evening sessions between December 3rd and December 12th, 2018 were held to accommodate those who may have been unable to view the capital project information boards during daytime hours. On January 25, 2019, the town posted on the Alberta Purchasing Connection a request for proposal for preliminary or schematic architectural design services for the town of Coaldale's downtown Civic Square project. This RFP contained great detail about the Civic Square project. On June 12, 2019, town administration, at the direction of council, delivered a presentation about the town Civic Square project to the Coaldale and District Chamber of Commerce. Several local business representatives were in attendance, including, as has been customary for several years, members of the local media. At the regular council meeting of December 9, 2019, council made the decision to shop the Civic Square commercial building opportunity to third-party developer following the conclusion of the competitive request for expressions of interest process. In fulfillment with this directive, the request for expression of interest document for the town's Civic Square project was posted on the Alberta Purchasing Connection from December 18, 2019 to February 6, 2020. Given that requests for expression of interest processes can contain complex accounting exercises and elements of subjectivity, Council developed a thorough and robust evaluation process. A few points are noted here. First, the request for expression of interest package, which was posted on the Alberta Purchasing Connection, was drafted by the town's legal counsel. Second, Council appointed a representative from Avail LLP to serve as chair of the Civic Square proposal evaluation process, including the task of delivering a recommendation letter to Council on which proponent to select based on the criteria set forth in the request for expression of interest document. Third, to ensure the process was fair and transparent as possible, Council appointed 3 town councillors to observe the evaluation process. Councillors Holm, Pauls, and Lloyd. I have sat on many boards and committees throughout the province of Alberta, and this is one of the most thorough evaluation process that I have seen, and one that we will continue to utilize as we go forward. This next section deals with conflict of interest. For the reasons I am about to provide, I am able to safely conclude that Councillor Simpson has complied with all legislative requirements as relates to conflict of interest situations this council term. Councillor Simpson first declared a pecuniary interest with respect to the Civic Square project at the regular council meeting of February 10th, 2020. This was important because the deadline for proponents to submit expressions of interest to undertake the Civic Square project was February 6, 2020. At the regular meeting of Council on February 10, 2020, item 12.1 on the council meeting agenda was a request for expressions of interest submission update with respect to the town Civic Square project. At the start of this meeting, Councillor Simpson said that she would be recusing herself from this particular item on the agenda. When Council got around to item 12.1 on the agenda, Councillor recused herself from the council chambers, which is exactly what an elected official is supposed to do when a matter could monetarily impact the councillor or a member of the councillors, or an employer of the councillor, or the councillor knows or ought to have known the matter could monetarily impact the councillor's family. And none of the exceptions apply. As an aside, it is not uncommon for conflict of interest situations to arise in local government, especially in smaller communities. This is not something that is peculiar to the town of Coaldale. It is how a councillor responds when they have a conflict of interest that is key. Since Councillor Simpson's family was connected to a commercial interest in one of the requests for expressions of interest proposals, she recused herself from council chambers while discussion about the civic project took place. She did not re-enter council chambers until after council concluded its discussion on the matter, and not until after council made a resolution appointing councillors Holm, Pauls, and Lloyd to the Civic Square Evaluation Committee, which was chaired by the town's auditors, Avail CPA. the Civic Square Proposal Evaluation Subcommittee provided an update to the council at the regular council meeting of February 24, 2020, during closed session. This item was listed as item 12.4, Civic Square RFEI Evaluation Subcommittee Update on the council's meeting agenda. At the start of this council meeting, Councillor Simpson declared that she would be recusing herself from council chambers when this item on the agenda emerged. When council got to this closed session agenda item, Councillor Simpson exited council chambers and did not return until after council moved to come out of closed session for the purpose of making a resolution to conclude its discussion about this item. At the regular council meeting of March 23, 2020, the Civic Square project appeared on the agenda as closed session item 12.2, Auditor's Report, Request for Expression of Interest Analysis, Civic Square C. Scott. At the start of this council meeting, Councillor Simpson advised council in public session that she would be recusing herself from item 12.2 for conflict of pecuniary interest reasons. When item 12.2 of the agenda emerged in closed session, Councillor Simpson exited council chambers and did not return to the meeting. After council concluded its closed session with his external auditor about the Civic Square proposals, they came out of closed session and made the following resolution: that council adopt the Vail CPA's recommendation for a developer proponent to undertake the Civic Square project following requests for expression of interest process that was posted on the Alberta Purchasing Connection. Further, that council direct administration to have legal counsel prepare the negotiated agreement for the developer that has been selected to undertake the Civic Square project. Further, following the completion of the agreement by the town solicitor, that council ratify the agreement at a future council meeting. Further, that a design workshop be held with council to determine a vision for the lands in and around the Civic Square construction area. In the absence of Councillor Simpson, this resolution passed by a vote of 6 in favor, 0 against. Under the Municipal Government Act, every member of council has an obligation to disclose and abstain from any discussion and voting on a matter which comes before council in which he or she has a pecuniary interest. If it falls within the realm of a pecuniary interest, the councillor or councillors is not to be present for any of the discussion related to the matter in respect of which they have disclosed a pecuniary interest. In such instances, the councillor is recused from council chambers and does not return until after discussion has concluded. In view of this, having been part of every council discussion this council term, Councillor Simpson's actions have been entirely in line with the requirements of Section 172 of the Municipal Government Act. As a town, we have been in full compliance with all legislation pertaining to this area, including the town's handling of the procurement process surrounding the Civic Square project. This next section deals with the status of the Civic Square project. Council has not entered into a contract with any of the proponents who have submitted a proposal to undertake the town Civic Square project. When the decision is made to finalize an agreement with a developer comes before council, residents can be confident that council's decision will be fair and objective, and as always, in the best interest of the town. For these same reasons, Councillor Simpson will not participate in future discussions about Civic Square, and I am confident she will follow the same due diligence measures that she has followed to date. This now brings me to the Citizens for Better Coaldale group's most recent letter of September 8, which I added to today's meeting agenda. Again, as this has been the case with the previous two letters that a member of this group has submitted to the town, they have not waited for the town to respond or to provide additional factual clarity to what appears to be a series of loaded questions, but instead have undertaken efforts to disseminate their viewpoint through various mediums, which again raises the question, how interested is this group in constructive dialogue? They have asked 5 questions, which in their letter, which I have reposted below, along with responses to each. Question 1, does Councillor Simpson or any member of her family have a financial interest with the contractor or developer or other party that is in negotiations with the town of Coaldale for the Civic Square project? Answer, yes, that is why she recused herself from all discussions pertaining to the evaluation of the Civic Square proposals, as is legislatively required. Councillor Simpson disclosed the general nature of her conflict at the start of each of the council meetings in which an agenda item posed a conflict of pecuniary interest. This was noted in our meeting minutes, which are published on the town's website. Question number 2, if Councillor Simpson recused herself from the past 3 council meetings, why is it acceptable for her to participate in a July 2020 council discussion about a plebiscite request on the Civic Square project and subsequent vote on the motion to deny it? Answer, the Municipal Government Act includes an exception to the pecuniary interest provisions where the interest cannot reasonably be regarded as likely to influence the councillor's handling of an issue. For this reason, Councillor Simpson may not have a pecuniary interest in all matters which become before council related to Civic Square. A councillor who does not have a pecuniary interest in a matter is required to participate and vote. Councillor Simpson concluded that the discussion about whether to delegate capital projects, plural, to a public vote was too remote of a connection for a conflict of pecuniary interest situation to exist. As council has made clear over the past year, we are committed to executing our 2019-2021 capital plan. We are not going to stall good projects through costly and time-consuming community votes in response to the magnitude of volume displayed by a few persistent and determined voices. We declined the request to refer the location of the joint high school and multi-use recreational center to a plebiscite vote in June 2019. Council has remained consistent in this desire to execute its capital plan in full as approved in November 2018. We are elected to make decisions in the best interest of the community. While not everyone will agree on which direction to go, we are committed to making our community a better place. Third question, if Councillor Simpson or immediate family member has a financial interest in the Civic Square project, is this ethically acceptable to taxpayers, especially due to the large financial value? Answer, Council established a thorough evaluation process to select the proposal that would have the greatest economic impact on the community. Indeed, our role as Council was to select the proposal that brought the greatest size of investment to our community. We are not going to discriminate against proposals that may have a connection to a town councillor. As long as a councillor is removed from the decision-making process, we as a town are committed to going with the best proposal. We are not going to deviate from this approach simply because of a loud minority has tried to use this as an opportunity to paint the town in a bad light. Question number 4. Since prior Civic Square planning meetings have likely taken place for over a year, during which time Councillor Simpson did not recuse herself, Is it fair to other possible competing developers or contractors? Hypothetically, could Councillor Simpson have acquired privileged information regarding the project and or shaped the outcome of the RFP to her advantage? Answer. Town councillors have a legal and ethical obligation to hold all information they learn by virtue of their position in office in the strictness of confidence until it is made public. Since there is no evidence to suggest a breach of this expectation by Councillor Simpson, we have no concerns with her conduct. As stated, the town's legal counsel drafted the request for expression of interest document. Council created a thorough evaluation process to ensure that the proposal that was selected would have the greatest economic impact for the town. The town was clear with all proponents who submitted that as long as they met the minimum project execution requirements, the winner would be the proponent who is going to make the biggest financial investment in Coaldale. If the proponent who was going to make the biggest financial investment in Coaldale was connected to a councillor who had recused themselves from the evaluation process, we are not going to discriminate against them for this reason. Question 5. In addition to a possible conflict of interest, would these circumstances not at least create the perception of a conflict of interest by Coaldale taxpayers or contractors interested in submitting possible bids? Answer. The point of this question is not clear. Councillor Simpson is the one who declared in a public council meeting that she had a conflict of interest with the Civic Square project once it was known that a business entity connected to her was part of a proposal. Since February 6, 2020, Councillor Simpson has recused herself from all discussions related to Civic Square proposals to ensure that no bias factored into the evaluation of same. What this process does is create a process of fairness. We are not going to scare potential future candidates away from running for council by giving in to loud community voices who are trying to manufacture an issue that is not there. In conclusion, given council has not entered into a contract with any of the proponents who submitted a proposal to undertake the Civic Square project in response to the request for expressions of interest, it is premature for me to relay any further particulars about any of the proponents at this time. Residents can be confident that council's decision will be fair and objective and, as always, in the best interest of the town. As it stands today, there is no contract between the town and any developer for Civic Square project. A company of which Councillor Simpson's husband is a part submitted an expression of interest to undertake the Civic Square project. That is the only information that can be confirmed at this time. As a result of the foregoing, I see no reason to believe that Councillor Simpson was offside in any way in regards to her responsibilities as a councillor to recuse herself in conflict of pecuniary interest situations. As council, we take very seriously the need to behave ethically. I think people need to remember that council has the ability under its code of conduct bylaw to commence its own investigation should we perceive an issue amongst ourselves. We are satisfied that this is not appropriate in the circumstances, as there were no grounds for us to commence our own investigation. Councillors Holm, Pauls, or Lloyd, all three of them were on the Civic Square Evaluation Committee. At this time, I would ask if any of you have anything you'd like to add before I conclude my remarks. Councillor Holm?
Your Worship, I would. I've got a couple of things I'd like to put out, but first, when you speak about the three of us being on the Civic Square Evaluation Committee, yes, I was one of the council reps assigned to that expression of interest committee, and we did, I believe, did a thorough review as a committee, professionally and without prejudice. I'd also like to add a few other thoughts. I'd like to provide my thoughts concerning regarding the Civic Square project, which has been brought forward by some members of our community, specifically the group who calls themselves Citizens for a Better Coaldale. This group has levied some very specific concerns and untruths directed at Councillor Simpson and her family. I want to be very clear that I hold in very high regard the councillor for the town of Coaldale. I worked in the position which was also governed by an act of the government of Alberta. I believe that I fully understand the needs to follow legislation and that we work under. I would be very vocal if I felt that someone on council or administration was not following legislation and the terms and the intent. The Citizens for a Better Coaldale have suggested that Councillor Simpson has not followed the Municipal Government Act and the terms under the Act pertaining to pecuniary interest. I want to go on record to state that Councillor Simpson is one of the few elected officials that I know not only understands the Act, but has on numerous occasions gone beyond the requirements of the Act. As a Coaldale and an elected official, I believe she has every right to do just like I do. She has the right to discuss matters pertaining to infrastructure development, operations, buildings, and planning for the town of Coaldale. That's what we are elected for. I believe that Councillor Simpson has ensured, or Councillor Simpson ensured that a statement of disclosure was filed with the town as per legislation shortly after being elected. Councillor Simpson has asked for clarification on potential peculiar interests on numerous occasions. She has also recused herself from any discussions on anything to do with something that could have peculiar interest. I believe the Municipal Government Act is very, very clear, sections 170, 172, etc., on what constitutes pecuniary interest and what must be done if a councillor is in a position that requires disclosure. In my opinion, Councillor Simpson has followed the Act fully and completely. It's also my opinion that Municipal Government actions and the sections of peculiar interest were written to ensure citizens who own businesses, who do work for or in the town, or have a direct role through community groups or organizations can run for public office without being criticized for doing what they were elected to do. Based on my experience and understanding of legislation, I believe that Councillor Simpson has followed the Act and its intentions and therefore does not deserve the criticism that she has been subject to from the group called Citizens for a Better Coaldale. I believe it is this group who are the ones who need to do better.
Thank you very much, Councillor Holm, for adding that to the record. And Councillor Pauls or Lloyd, are you okay with it? Okay. You agree with that? Okay. So we have a affirmation from Councillor Lloyd and Councillor Pauls that we're also on that council appointed panel for the screening process, and they are in concurrence with Councillor Holmes' comments. So I will make my final remarks. Based on the behavior displayed by members of Citizens for a Better Coaldale group, I no longer see a reason for council to meet with them. To this end, I would entertain a motion from council to receive my report and the verbal report of Councillor Holm as read, and to rescind council's motion to meet with this group. That concludes my statement. Do we have any discussion? I see no discussion. I'll call the question and note that Councillor Simpson is not in attendance at the time of this vote, so I will call the question. All in favor? And that is carried 6 in favor with 1 abstention. Thank you, Councillor Chapman. We will just wait for a minute for Councillor Simpson to rejoin us. Thank you for joining us again, Councillor Simpson. We are on to information items. We have information items 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, 11.4, and 11.5. And are there any of those items in particular that any member of council would like to single out and speak to or have any questions on? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and just to the minutes of the FCSS. At our last board meeting last Wednesday here at the Hub, the board approved suspending any client work till October, and the reason for that was just more of an observation of the how things were going in all the schools, and that to see how things were going in those areas, and then try to develop a very robust rapport with the community that they serve, so that it's safe and that the protocols that are in place are that they will adhere to them. So I just wanted to add that into the. It'll come out in next month's minutes, but I just wanted to add that for the moment.
Anything? Thank you for the update. So if there aren't any particular items in the information section, I would entertain an omnibus motion to receive those 5 items for information. Councillor Pauls makes that motion to receive all 5 items for information. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried 7-0, or unanimously in another way of saying it. Thank you very much. We are now at the conclusion of the public portion of the meeting, and I would entertain a motion to go into closed session. Councillor Lloyd makes that motion. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously.